Hey and welcome back to Would You Survive, where we look at horror movies and see if you can survive them. Today we are looking at Final Destination 2. Final Destination 2 was directed by David R. Ellis, and Craig Perry, who is the producer for all of the Final Destination movies, has said that they never intended to make any sequels.
We would have called it Final Destination if we thought there'd be 5 more movies. I mean, that seems to make no marketing sense.
But because of the success of the first movie, they decided to make the sequel. Final Destination 2 is by far the best in the franchise, in my opinion, but Final Destination Bloodlines just beats it. Make sure you watch Final Destination 2 for yourself, because there is a lot I haven't included in this video. I will be looking at a lot of the behind the scenes stuff since I think the practical effects used in this movie are amazing. I will also give you the percentage chance you have of surviving this movie at the end of the video. Once again, my videos are inspired by Dead Meat, How to Beat and Nerds Explains, but now let's get into the video. The movie starts with the TV news talking about the previous movie's disaster.
180 exploded and crashed shortly after takeoff.
They even discuss how death caught up with all of the survivors from the last movie except for one, which you will see later. So basically in this movie they are aware about Death's design. We then get introduced to Kimberly, who is the main character in this movie. Kimberly is packing up for a road trip with her friends. We jump to a green light which quickly turns to a red light, which happens literally every time you want to go somewhere. Kimberly and her friend have now picked up the others and they get their window knocked on by this lady, which they rudely laugh at for dropping her rubbish.
But Dano, shouldn't we help your mom? Oh, good one, man. Yeah, you're hilarious.
When Kimberly turns on the radio station, the station is reporting on the Flight 180 crash, which was the disaster from the last movie. To further add to the warning signs, Kimberly's dad calls up to say that her car is leaking fluid. But wait, that isn't all. A log truck drives by, and then Kimberly sees this kid hitting a toy red car and a log truck together. I think this is enough warning signs now, you need to turn around. We then see this police officer called Officer Burke, who's just having a normal drive. But then his coffee spills all over his knee. That would really hurt. But I bet that doesn't hurt as much as this log going through his face. We then get this motorcyclist falling off his motorcycle and then it goes straight into him. This scene is so chaotic. We have cars spinning, trucks going through them, cars exploding because of logs, more cars spinning and people on fire. This is by far the best scene in all of the Final Destination movies. I do have to give credit to the making of this scene, since the majority of it was done with practical effects. They had stunt performers getting dragged by wires for the motorcycle scene, and actual people driving cars while spinning them all over the place. But as we all know, that was just a premonition, and now we are back where that woman drops everything. Kimberly decides to drive her car and park sideways to block anyone from going past the traffic lights. Officer Burt sees all this and then talks to Kimberly. She makes the great decision to tell him about all of her vision. The character in the last movie did this and then got kicked off the plane, so Kimberly needs to be careful what she's telling Officer Burke. But wait, that vision happens and now Officer Burke and everyone else is confused. A truck then slams into Kimberly's car when her friends are still in there. They actually recorded Officer Burke and Kimberly on a green screen for this scene. After using the green screen footage of Officer Burke and Kimberly, they added this over the top of the background. We jump to the police station where all the survivors are. The majority of the survivors obviously do not believe Kimberly when she explains her premonition, and the fact that she thinks death will chase them all. We also have this guy called Eugene giving us a brief explanation on the last movie.
Hunting each one down until they were all dead.
Officer Burt then gives us confirmation that Clear Rivers is still alive from the last movie. We then see this lotto winner, Evan, bringing back a bunch of stuff. And then, like everyone does in these movies, he chucks stuff away for no reason. Also, you might want to be a bit more careful with that oil. Evan then puts on his nice new watch, most likely bought with his lotto win money. Evan's ring then falls off his finger into this sink, and when he goes to get it, his hand gets stuck. And no, that isn't it. The pan causes his whole room to set on fire. But then Evan finally frees his hand and smashes his window to escape with his chair. So he escaped, right? He avoided death. No, Evan slips over the food he chucked out the window earlier and a ladder goes straight through his eyes. This scene was amazing and done with mostly practical effects. The Final Destination movies are amazing with their use of practical effects, and Final Destination 2 is a perfect example of this. We jump to Officer Burt doing research into Alex Browning, aka Stan. He also looks into the rest of the Flight 180 survivors. While Kimberly is researching into the Flight 180 survivors, she figures out that Clear Rivers is staying in Stony Brook. She decides to pay Clear Rivers a visit and has to get rid of anything that may be dangerous when entering the building. Clear Rivers and Kimberly talk about Route 23's incident and Kimberly's premonition. But wait, they figure out that death is working backwards this time, compared to it working in order in the first movie. Clear Rivers decides she doesn't want to help Kimberly and the others, and then Kimberly says some very nice stuff to Claire.
What?
I think you're a coward. You hide out in here because you're too damn bitter and selfish to help any other person.
Kimberly goes to see Officer Burt to talk about Evan's death, and Officer Burt says that everyone is meeting up at his apartment later. A bunch of pigeons then fly towards Kimberly, but Officer Burt doesn't see this. So that means this is most likely a vision. This scene was actually made by filming pigeons in front of a green screen and putting it over the top of the footage. We then see Tim and his mum at the dentist, where Tim is obviously getting his teeth checked. The fish tank machine starts leaking and pigeons start flying all into the window. The dentist decides to leave the room while Tim is still in it. I'm sure this is against some safety measures. Then he's perfectly placed fake fish fall and one lands in Tim's mouth, but Tim is saved in the very last second. However, as he's leaving the dentist, Kimberly and Officer Burt start screaming about the pigeons, and Tim runs out towards them and gets crushed by this glass. After Tim's death, Claire appears and talks to Officer Burke and Kimberly, and she is now helping them avoid death. She then takes them to see the one and only Tony Todd. Tony Todd explains that only new life can defeat death.
Only new life can defeat death.
After seeing Tony Todd, Kimberly gets a vision of a car underwater. Kimberly explains that in her vision she was driving a white van, and then that van crashes into the water. But wait, that pregnant lady was in a white van on Route 23. Burt decides to get the police to arrest her for stealing the van, even though it was her van. Surely there could have been an easier way than this. But anyway, now the rest of the survivors show up at Officer Burke's apartment to talk about Death's design and who's next. And next on Death's list is Nora. Some survivors believe this and some survivors don't, Eugene being one of the people who doesn't believe this. Well, let's say he keeps changing his mind about it. They then decide to safe-proof Officer Burt's apartment. However, Nora and Eugene decide to leave and take the elevator on the way out, where a guy is holding a basket full of fake arms. This guy even likes Nora's hair. Maybe she just uses some nice smelling shampoo. While in the elevator, Nora gets a call from the survivors warning her about a guy with hooks, and when trying to get out of the elevator, her head gets stuck and eventually taken off. Also, according to Craig Perry, this scene was based off true events.
Actually also inspired by a real event. It happened.
I wish I didn't know this. We figure out that Isabella, the pregnant lady, is in protective custody to try and keep her safe from death. And then her water breaks. The police officer decides to rush Isabella to the hospital. We also figure out that all the survivors are connected to the first movie. When having the conversation, the car with the survivors suddenly crashes into a bunch of pipes where one of them has gone through Eugene's lung, and a branch is keeping Kat stuck in her seat. This guy attempts to save Kat, but yeah, that didn't turn out very well.
Yeah, sure. I'll just put it on quiet mode.
One of the news vans leaks into these pipes, which causes a giant fire which explodes and sends these wires going straight through Rory. Kimberly, Claire and Officer Burt decide to rush towards the hospital where Isabella is. But on the way, Kimberly gets this vision of a nurse choking someone, which makes them think this is how death will get Isabella. However, in Eugene's room, all the vents and equipment stop working, which makes it difficult for Eugene to breathe. Claire decides to go and find Eugene while Burke and Kimberly try to find Isabella, and they end up stopping this doctor when she's trying to help Isabella. But wait, they don't know that yet. The baby is successfully born, but then Kimberly realises that death was never after Isabella, since she was going to survive the pile up on Route 23 anyway. Forget that, they need to save Eugene, he's still struggling to breathe. Oh, finally, Claire finds Eugene. Never mind, the whole room explodes and death has finally got to Claire and Eugene. Originally there was a scene where the fire goes over Eugene's body, but then later on this scene got deleted, but I don't know why. Kimberly then realised that it's her hands in the white van premonition. Kimberly figures out that to avoid death she needs to die and then be brought back to life. She then steals a white van and decides to drive it straight into the lake, with Officer Burt jumping in right after her. Kimberly is then brought back to life by this doctor, so does that mean they have avoided death? After this we see Kimberly and Officer Burke at a barbecue with Mrs. Gibbons and her family. They learn that Brian avoided getting hit by a news van. But then suddenly a barbecue explodes and Brian's arm lands on the table. Another great ending to another Final Destination movie. But do you still think you would survive Final Destination 2? Let me know in the comments. But in my opinion you have 0% chance of surviving, since we have seen that even if you avoid death for years it will always catch up to you. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video I'd love it if you subscribed. On Friday, which is actually a Friday the 13th, we are looking at Beetlejuice the original.
It's showtime.
We are just taking a 1 to 2 week break from making videos on Final Destination. But yes, we will complete the rest of the movie soon. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.